Alright guys, this is Chapter 8, Section 3. It is the last section of photosynthesis, and then we'll be moving on into cellular respiration. Okay, we've been talking about light-dependent reactions as well as light-independent reactions. Remember, light-dependent reactions are reactions that are taking place in the presence of light. They have to take place. They depend upon light. Light-independent reactions don't depend upon light, but they can still occur in the presence of light. So they'll still happen during the daytime. It's just that they don't require light energy. So we have, in light-dependent reactions, we have ATP and NADPH that are being created. So within our thylakoids, we have chlorophyll and we have proteins, and those proteins are called photosystems. All right? Photosystems will absorb sunlight and they will generate high energy electrons. So down here, let me get the pen. I've drawn a picture for you. So right here we have photosystems that are going to absorb the sun. Right here. S for sun. Okay? That sunlight, remember, gets converted into electrons, and we've discussed up to this point, up to that electron. Okay? Those electrons are going to get passed over to carriers within the thylakoid membrane, and we have touched upon that. NADP plus is the carrier of those electrons. All right? So, photosystem 2, there's two photosystems. Photosystem 2 is first, and the reason why it's called Photosystem 2 instead of Photosystem 1 is because Photosystem 1, over on that picture, right here, actually got discovered first. Okay, and then they discovered Photosystem 2 and realized, oops, this came first. Well, it's too late. We've already named it. Okay, so light energy is going to get absorbed by electrons in pigments within the photosystem 2. We shorthand photosystem 2 with a PS. And when that occurs, we get an increase in the electron energy level. Okay? So light energy comes in and excites the electrons. The electron state goes up in energy. Okay? There's excitement. Those high energy electrons are going to be transported to what's called the electron transport chain, and we shorthand that ETC. And those are basically a series of carriers. You could see right here we've got two labeled there. Okay, these big ones right here. Okay, and then we've got this one right here. And then after photosystem 1, we're going to have some on the other side. Okay, and basically that electron transport chain acts like a shuttle to carry high energy electrons during the ATP processing. Okay, so within photosystem 2, let's start pretty much at the beginning. Okay, so we have electrons that are from water. Remember, photosynthesis requires H2O. So some of you have asked where those electrons come from, and those electrons actually come from the breakdown of water. So right here, that's highlighted, okay? When water gets split up, we get a release of electrons. Excuse me. Enzymes within the thylakoid surface, the thylakoid space, okay? They're going to break up water molecules into 2 electrons, 2 hydrogen ions, and 1 oxygen atom. Okay, those hydrogen ions are important. Oxygen, if you can recall, is what we breathe, so that gets released. It's the waste product of plants, and we breathe that in. All right, so oxygen, like I just said, gets released into the air, and then those hydrogen ions are actually going to get released into the thylakoid, and those are going to be important. These guys right here, right? Released from water. Okay, we're going to see these later, and they're super important. All right. So let's move on from the electron transport chain. We just came from water, and now energy from those electrons is basically used by the proteins within the electron transport chain. And what happens at this carrier, this pink one, okay, when an electron, see if I can color these guys. See, these are little electrons. Okay, when they get passed through the electron transport chain and they go through this particular protein, okay, that energy that's contained within that electron will actually pump hydrogen ions from the stroma, that's that inside aqueous solution within a chloroplast, okay, and they get pumped right through into the thylakoid space. So we're getting lots of hydrogen ions happening within the thylakoid. Okay, so see, if you look at the yellow in that picture, we've got electrons that have passed all the way through, and now they've made it to photosystem I. So if you need to pause and recap, if you don't understand what's going on in photosystem II, pause here and go back and watch the first half of what we've been talking about, okay? Now, in photosystem I, basically, those electrons that have originally gone through the electron transport chain, okay, they kind of die down. It's kind of like what we've been talking about when a 2-year-old eats candy and they get really excited, right? The child, the 2-year-old, is the electron, right? The sunlight is the candy bar. They eat it, they're excited. Okay, a certain amount of time passes on, they get sluggish and exhausted. So maybe you're the silly mom and you give them another piece of candy, okay? They need to get excited again. So what happens is, since energy was used right here to pump those hydrogen ions into the thylakoid space, those electrons don't have as much energy as they need when they reach photosystem I. So at this point, I've drawn some arrows. Okay, let's see if I can pick a different pen color. Right, light right here is going to be used at photosystem I. And it's going to re-energize those electrons that are passing through the electron transport chain so that they have energy again because they're essential in some reactions that are going to take place in just a minute. All right, so by the end of this short electron transport chain, the NADP plus carrier molecule in the stroma, it's located in the stroma, okay? It's going to pick up those high energy electrons. So we've had electrons go through this transport train. By the time they got sent to photosystem I, they got excited again from light. All right. And so now they're going to continue on, and they're going to be picked up by NADP+, right? And that hydrogen ion, because we want that reaction to occur so that that electron can be carried. Okay, and they get pumped out to the outer surface of the thylakoid membrane, and that's where they become NADPH. So you could see right here what's occurring. Okay, we have 2 hydrogens, 2 NADP pluses, and 4 electrons that are going to basically make 2 NADPHs. Right, and this happens one after another, not at the same exact time, but you'll have enough electrons pass through so that this reaction can take place. Okay, and there it is in full color. You can see everything. And that next portion, we haven't talked about ATP synthase, but we'll get there in just a second. Okay, so we have hydrogen movement that needs to occur, and we still need to make ATP. We've already made NADPH, right, from the electron that's getting carried through photosystem II, photosystem I, and the electron transport chain. But we haven't taken care of the ATP that we need, because that's what happens in light-dependent reactions. And we've had a huge amount of hydrogen ions down here that got pumped through. right? Water got broken down, so those hydrogen ions stayed, and then we had lots of other hydrogen ions that stayed. So, since it's high, we have a high concentration, right, on the thylakoid space. You want to think back to your osmosis and diffusion things. We've got a high concentration. We don't want a high concentration. That means that homeostasis is not being met. All right, so what has to happen is that we've got to make up the difference, all right, so that we can get ATP energy to be made. So this thing over here, let me get my pen, excuse me, right here is called ATP synthase. You can think of it as an ATP synthesizer. Synthesizing something means it's going to be made. So these ATP synthases are all throughout the membrane of the thylakoid. And what happens is hydrogen is actually going to get passed through it. So it acts kind of like a carrier protein. That's basically what it is. So all these hydrogen ions that are in great amounts on the inside of the space are going to get pumped through that ATP synthase. Okay? When that happens, we get ADP that has just been sitting there inside of the thylakoid, and it's going to generate ATP. So these hydrogen ions are actually providing some energy in order to get that reaction to occur. Okay, so it's powered by the gradient. The hydrogen ions are going to pass through the ATP synthase, and that ATP synthase will actually rotate. It spins, and that spinning motion brings us that ATP. Okay, so as it rotates, basically what's happening is that ATP synthase is going to bind to ADP, right? We get that phosphate group that gets back together and produces our ATP. So this entire process up until this point, Photosystem I, Photosystem II, and the ATP synthase, so the production of NADPH and ATP is called chemiosmosis, right? We have NADPH, energy carrier, and ATP, another energy carrier, that are made through the light-dependent reactions. That itself is chemiosmosis. So let's have a summary of our light-dependent reactions. In our light-dependent reactions, we have oxygen that's produced, right? It is a waste, right? Remember water splitting up down here. And when it splits up, it releases oxygen, and that just goes into the air, and we get to stay alive because we get to breathe it. We have ADP, and that's turning into ATP. And we have NADP plus that gets turned into NADPH. And remember that both ATP and NADPH are energy carriers, and these are going to get used up in light independent reactions. Okay. So remember that ATP and NADPH are sent to light independent reactions, which is just what I said. And they're going to, at that point in the light independent reactions, we're going to have the production of high energy sugar that comes from low energy carbon dioxide. All right, that's it. So please watch this again. If you need extra help, we will review this on Monday, and we'll hopefully get to do some activities with it. All right, have a good weekend.